Okay. Great, everyone. Great, everyone. Welcome to the February 26th joint meeting of the SANDAG Borders Committee and the Committee on Binational Regional Opportunities with the municipalities and state government of Baja, California. This is our binational summit, and normally, of course, we hold this in person. It's been a long year, and so we're doing this virtually, and hopefully this is the last time we ever have to do it virtually. And we're so glad you're here. We're giving you virtual abrazos, big hugs to everybody. And so anyway, I want to welcome everyone who's visiting us from Mexico, as well as, of course, all around the county and our counties of San Diego and adjacent counties as well, and our tribal partners. On this occasion, Ambassador Carlos Gonzalez, Consul General of Mexico in San Diego, also a member of the committee, will be co-chairing this special meeting. Thank you, Consul General. It's so great to see you. And I said, for all of you, in honor of this meeting, I have a picture of myself surfing arguably one of the most beautiful places in the world, Isla de Todos Santos, in the municipio de Ensenada. En Regidora, ya sé que no tanto Rosarito también tiene buenas olas, pero Isla de Todos Santos, world known for one of the best big wave surf spots in the world. So I'm missing it anyway, and the great food at Molle Tres afterwards. So, and just please note, simultaneous interpretation is available at this meeting. I would also like to ask Carlos, our interpreter, if he could briefly explain how the feature works.
Thank you, Mayor Dedina. Y buenas tardes, good afternoon. As the mayor and chair already indicated, we do have simultaneous interpreting. I will make the announcement in Spanish and then again in English. Buenas tardes, contamos con servicio de interpretación simultánea. Para hacer uso del servicio, solo necesita desplazarse a la barra inferior de su pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Ahí haría clic en el icono de interpretación, es un globo terráqueo, y seleccionaría Spanish, español. Y si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego Interpretation, interpretación, y luego el idioma. Once again, we do have interpretation available. To use the service, please scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are and click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a little world. And then select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, the three dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Carlos. I appreciate it. And then just everyone be patient. We've got a complex meeting. I'm managing two laptops. If you want to obviously speak, we'll let you know how to do that. But just again, please be patient. It reminds me of managing the lifeguard tower at the Silver Strand State Beach when I was a lifeguard, when you've got all kinds of things going on. So anyway, with that, I hope all of you and your families are well. And obviously we're all still navigating the pandemic, but things are getting better. So that's totally awesome. And these have been difficult times. And you know, the most important thing is that we just miss each other, right? Like this meeting is generally absolutely, I may get emotional. Actually, I'll probably get emotional. Awesome. And I realize how much I miss it, how much I need it, but more importantly, how much we need each other and how much we help each other. That's what's so profoundly moving and inspiring about our binational reason and our commitment to bottoms up and top down diplomacy, citizen diplomacy, civic diplomacy, government diplomacy, more importantly, the commitment to helping each other with our friends and our families and our countries. And that is as good as it gets and a model for global cooperation. And with that, I just want to say that our two countries, our new Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, just met, I think that I just saw it on Twitter, with Tatiana Clouthier, the Minister of Secretary of Economy of Mexico. So that's good news. And the more that we cooperate and work together, the more we get done for our families and our friends. So anyway, this meeting is all part of that, right? And so with that, I'd just like to ask Avelia, do we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum, Chair Dedina.
Okay, and so just some procedural stuff. For board committee and COBRA members, please note that you're not muted by the meeting organizer, so you'll have to mute and unmute yourself. In addition, when you'd like to speak, please turn on your camera or raise your hand by opening your participants panel on the Zoom toolbar. and clicking raise hand at the bottom. Once I see you, I will recognize you at that time, but I've asked our SANDAG staff to help me with that because, again, it's complicated to make sure I get everybody. If you're a member of the public and would like to speak on an item, please use the raise hand item in the toolbar. When you are called, you will be unmuted by the SANDAG staff. If you are calling in by phone, you may need to enter *6 to unmute yourself. After your comments, you will be muted by SANDAG staff. If you're calling into the meeting, please press *9 on your phone if you would like to comment on an item. All comments, whether emailed or live, will be made a part of today's meeting record. Do you have any questions on that before we continue? Okay, to save time, I would want to table the approval of meeting minutes for our next meeting. And I just want to ask our legal counsel to confirm. Peter, we can do that. Is that correct?
Yes, that is okay.
Now, do we need, I want to make sure I'm unclear. Do we need to vote on that or we just move, do I have to get a motion and a vote on that?
No, we can just move on without doing that.
Great. Okay, so we're moving on to the next item, and just bear with me. We have lots of folks who joined the meeting today just to say hi. Sometimes they come before the meeting when we're in person, but I've asked a few folks to adjust their schedules because of the importance of this meeting. And so with that, Consul General Carlos Gonzalez, this is a special meeting for many reasons. And, we have never through such challenging times, a pandemic, the economic crisis, social equity, issues of climate change. We're in a new era of free trade, mutual respect, and cooperation between the United States and Mexico. And many of us have played important roles in making that happen. I want to acknowledge the role that our leaderful region had in getting the USMCA approved and acknowledging the special role that our border plays in our economy. It's so important, and we realize what we've lost during this pandemic, economically, culturally, in terms of our family and friendship. And today we have an impressive list of participants that I will introduce. But before I proceed, I want to invite our SANDAG board chair, Mayor Catherine Blakespeare, a strong champion of border relations, who stayed for this special meeting to address the group. Take it away, Catherine.
Well, thank you very much. And in honor of your Imperial Beach wave, I put up the Encinitas Beach behind me as well. Yeah, so we could all be having a little bit of slice of the heaven that we live with here. My name is Catherine Blakespeare, and it's my great honor to serve as the chair of SANDAG and also as the mayor in the city of Encinitas. And I've participated in these events before and also traveled to Mexico City. And obviously our binational region is of utmost importance to me and to all of us who serve on the SANDAG board. So I'm very pleased to welcome you to this special meeting and to say muchas gracias and bienvenidos a todos. I see many friends here and some new faces in this virtual room. And it is true that we are all here united to build bridges across our international border. Our two countries are currently experiencing very difficult times. Responding to the great needs of our community is not easy work, but it is necessary. The pandemic has reaffirmed what we all know, which is we are together in this region and we share our future. So it's up to us to decide what we want to do. Today, we have a great agenda that underscores how far this collaborative energy can take us as a region. We are so grateful to have you all here today to celebrate and continue the dialogue. Congratulations and felicidades.
Thank you so much, Chair Blakespeare. We do appreciate it. And just, this isn't just because if you're surfers from Encinitas are watching, this is Todos Santos in Baja, California, a wave that's way better than Swami's, which is still an amazing wave. So I just want to clarify that. And so now I'm also honored to introduce Honorable Carla Ruiz McFarland, who on February 12th became the first mayor of the city of Tijuana, the first female mayor of the city of Tijuana. One of the most important and largest in Mexico, with obviously the best food on the planet. Make that clear. Tijuana does have the best food on the planet that I miss instantly. And it's going to clarify. And Rosarito made, but that's really important. The thing about Mayor Ruiz McFarland is that she's very connected to Imperial Beach because Jorge surfs Imperial Beach. He's one of the padrinos and fathers of Mexican surfing and Baja California surfing. I've surfed a lot, and her cousin Patrick is a great friend. Everyone's connected to Imperial Beach because we're right on the border. And with that, Alcaldesa Carla Ruiz, we'd love to have you say a few words.
Hola, me encanta tener estos lazos y unirnos, que tengan familia que han sido líderes también en San Diego y ahorita yo me tocó estar de Tijuana. Pues saludo con mucho gusto a todos los representantes de este comité fronterizo, alcaldes, cónsules, representantes diplomáticos, ciudadanos y con quien compartimos hoy este diálogo, ¿no? Bonito. Pues, ¿qué te puedo decir de mi ciudad? Tijuana es una ciudad multicultural, dinámica, el municipio más poblado de México. Y la verdad, aparte de todo eso, yo sé que de repente en los medios escuchamos las cosas no tan positivas, pero Tijuana es una ciudad de muchas bondades y de muchas oportunidades de trabajo. Para nosotros y para mí en especial, de verdad, es muy importante estrechar estos lazos culturales, de tradiciones y amistades que tenemos en esta región fronteriza. En este año, pues ha sido complicado por la pandemia y aprovecho aquí a dar las gracias de manera muy especial a mis compañeros de California, San Diego, porque sé que en este momento que hemos tenido, que han podido vacunar allá, nos están pidiendo la ciudadanía, entonces de verdad de corazón se los agradezco. Retiro también, quiero aprovechar aquí para externar el compromiso que tengo con las empresas estadounidenses que operan aquí en nuestra ciudad. Espero que siempre se sientan también apoyados y podamos trabajar juntos. ¿Qué les puedo decir? En el sector político y empresarial sabemos muy bien la importancia de sumar por causas comunes, sobre todo de trabajar unidos siempre y para brindarles esta como estabilidad y transparencia a nuestros ciudadanos de esta región. Yo sí creo de corazón en lo que es la región Cali-Baja y es algo que quiero impulsar. Mi gobierno, el gobierno ahorita que encabezo, tiene como objetivo potenciar el desarrollo económico a través de los diferentes proyectos que tenemos y que compartimos, en conjunto con las empresas regionales, nacionales, internacionales que tienen en Tijuana sus plataformas de negocios. Desde aquí, nada más externo mi apoyo a todos estos proyectos, a estas reuniones que surjan y los invito a venir a comer a Tijuana, a pasar un tiempo y a ver las cosas bellas de nuestra ciudad. Yo soy una fiel creyente en que el bien, el mal, no lo debes de atacar con más mal, sino con más bien y con cosas positivas y este mensaje de unidad que no solo quede en palabras, sino que quede en acciones y en hechos para ser congruentes. Muchísimas gracias y les envío un saludo afectuoso a todos.
No, le agradezco, alcaldesa, y ya obviamente ya hablamos hace un par de días y ya estamos aquí a apoyarle y obviamente ojalá en el futuro ya estaremos juntos comiendo tacos o en Misión 19 en Tijuana, ¿no? Te invito a comer tacos de pescado en Imperial Beach con tu tío.
Okay. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Muy bien. So now I'm also, and I think it's really important that we have Vice Chair of SANDAG and the new mayor of San Diego, who, I'm going to make this clear, I think one of his first meetings after being elected and inaugurated was meeting with his counterpart in Tijuana, and then obviously with Carla, Alcaldesa Ruiz McFarland. So Mayor Gloria, I'd love to have you say a few words, please.
Well, thank you, Mayor Dina, and chair of our committee. Thank you for including me. And it's wonderful to see my friend Carla here. I'm actually coming to you from Montgomery High School in San Ysidro, where I can look out this window right here and see Carla's beautiful city. We're here at Montgomery High because we're vaccinating people here at our San Ysidro Mobile Vaccination Center. I believe over 300 San Ysidro residents will be able to be vaccinated today. But I did want to take a moment to join you, Mayor Dina, and all of these great leaders for the joint meeting of the Borders Committee and the Committee on Binational Regional Opportunities. I'm really proud to see this collection of faces on the screen, leaders from both sides of the border, really committing ourselves to our joint future together. I want to say very clearly that I see San Diego as a global world-class city. We're proud to be home to people from 115 different countries and territories, and proud to be home of the world's busiest land border crossing. I want to be clear that I see our city as a welcoming city, and we understand and we value the importance of our border. And I want to also be clear that this is not just about dollars and cents, commerce and trade. This is about people. The border cannot be seen as a dividing line, but rather as a seam that knits our two countries together, two countries, two communities, and two cultures. I believe the border makes us more diverse, makes us more prosperous, and is going to make us more successful in the years ahead. I am fully committed to the work here at SANDAG under Mayor Dedina's leadership of making sure that we have collaborative relationships across the border to tackle our biggest issues. And of course, those issues stem everything from cross-border trade at the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry that we will be building soon, to the Tijuana River Valley, where we continue to have work that must be prioritized, to bigger issues like global migration, for which we all have a shared responsibility. As Mayor Dedina noted, my administration is focused and leading on binational affairs, and we'll continue to do that. I look forward to working with all of you in the months and the years ahead. This is an interesting time. I think we're coming out of relatively dark times, but I think the future is extremely bright, both from a health perspective and from a border perspective. I'm just so grateful to be a partner with all of you in these bright times that lay ahead. Thank you, Mayor Dedina.
Thank you, Mayor Gloria, and for taking time out of the most work that you're doing. So thanks. You know, my wife actually used to work at Montgomery Junior High, so that's just up the hill from where I grew up in Imperial Beach. So thanks a lot for all that you're doing and the partnership with all of our cities and obviously cities across the border. So keep up the great work. Thanks. So now we have, first, we have a lot of new members of the border committee who will be able to say a few words, but we have to get through some procedural stuff. But I want to just call out and just acknowledge the new members of the borders committee that we have. That's pretty much a brand new committee, which is great. We have Laura Caval from the city of Santee, Jack Shu from the city of La Mesa, both representing East County, Dave Drucker from the city of Del Mar, and Ryan Keem from the city of Oceanside, both representing North County Coastal. Barry Leonard from the city of Poway, now new alternate for Paul McNamara, city of Escondido, representing North County Inland. And then Supervisor Joel Anderson and Supervisor Nora Vargas from the county of San Diego. And my good friend, new council member Sean Elo Rivera, a new alternate for Vivian Moreno, city of San Diego, who's the new vice chair of the committee. And thank you so much, Vice Chair Moreno. I would also like to thank our rep from Imperial County, Supervisor Jesus Escobar, who's our vice chair doing last year, as well as the alternate. And then Supervisor Luis Blancarte. And then lastly, my good friend, Bill Sankey from the city of Coronado, my teammate for South County. Thanks, Bill, for all that you do to promote cross-border relations. And then, as you know, our Borders Committee also brings to the table our partners from Orange and Riverside counties, Caltrans, the Water Authority, the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association, for our valued and esteemed tribal partners, SCAG and COBRO, who are also all joining us today. So thank you for all participating. But the list continues, and we have some other very distinguished participants who are joining us today. To expedite their introductions, I will read the list of confirmed participants first, and later we will invite them to share a few words. From the state of Baja California, we have Karen Postlethwaite, the Secretary of Infrastructure, Urban Development, and Land Use Regulations. We have Luis Moreno, Undersecretary of Gobierno. We have Ruben Roa, Undersecretary of Sustainable Economy, and Yvette Casillas, the Undersecretary of Tourism. Thank you all for being here. For the municipalities of Northern Baja California, I am pleased to announce Mayor Zulema Adams, City of Tecate. Welcome again, who joined us in last year's joint meeting in person. Councilmember Pilar O. Vargas, City of Playas del Rosarito. Unfortunately, Mayor Marina de Pilar Avila, City of Mexicali, could not be with us today, but in her place, we have Luis Javier Garavito, Cabinet Coordinator, Chief of Staff for the City of Mexicali. Thank you all for being here. And then we also have some additional very important folks. We have the participation of the 3 directors of the Municipal Planning Institutes, Rodolfo Argote, Implan Tijuana, Alejandro Ruiz, Impladen Tecate, and then Raul Aragon, Implan Playas de Rosarito. And then thank you so much for being here. And then also from our federal government partners, Pablo Galvez, Director for Border Affairs of Mexico's Ministry of Foreign Relations. Pablo, thank you so much for being here. Rebecca Daly, Mexico Desk at Department of State. Rebecca, thanks a lot for being here. our good friend Ramon Riesgo from U.S. General Service Administration, the GSA, and then Jesse Herford, Carlos Carranza, and Salvador Lopez from NetBank. I just want to thank personally our friends, our good friends at NetBank, and I was able to be with Salvador yesterday on a call with the US EPA and just gave an amazing discussion of all the good things that are going on in Tijuana with regards to water quality. So that was really nice. Thanks you guys for all your leadership. And then I want to thank our SANDAG leadership, Mayor Alejandra Sotelo Solis from the City of National City and second Vice Chair of SANDAG, as well as Mayor Mary Casillas Salas, the City of Chula Vista, and Chair of the SANDAG Regional Planning Committee. And now, Consul General Gonzalez, would you invite our distinguished guest to say a few words before we jump into the agenda, please?
Thank you very much, Mayor, Chair Dedina. It's an honor for me to be here today. And just like you, I do hope that our next meeting is definitely in person. Now, I would like to invite our leadership in SANDAG to help us welcome our distinguished participants from Mexico. Our second Vice Chair, Alejandra Sotelo, please.
Pues mucho gusto y es un placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. ¿Se escucha?
Sí.
Okay. Well, on behalf of the City of National City and my sister city, Tecate, with Alcaldesa Adams, I want to continue to say thank you for being a beautiful partner in our Baja Cali region. We know the significance. And yesterday I was part of a panel and we were talking about the border region. And it's not just about immigration, it's about quality of life. We talk about water issues, we talk about growth, we talk about commerce, we talk about water resources. All of those issues are of concern on both sides of the border. And that's why we work so beautifully together. People that aren't from here don't know the magic that is the Baja Cali region and the importance that each one of us plays. So on behalf of the City of National City and as the second Vice Chair, adelante, we're here, whatever you need. And si quieren, you come have some tacos over here at Tacos del Gordo in National City too. So if you go to Imperial Beach, aquí están invitados también, ¿eh? Un abrazo. Thank you, Consul.
Muchas gracias, Mayor. Now, Mayor Mary Salas, Chair of the Regional Planning Committee, please.
Sí, muy buenas tardes a todos y tengo mucho orgullo como una mujer de herencia mexicana que todos los alcaldes están aquí con nosotros y todos los vecinos en Baja California. Y estamos aquí para hablar sobre el futuro de nuestra región y juntos podemos tener un futuro que va a mejorar nuestras comunidades en la región. And I'm proud to join my fellow mayors of the Cali Baja region to hear about the exciting opportunities that are in the horizon. And Chula Vista will continue to partner with our neighbors in the region to ensure that we all succeed, not only in having strong economic growth, but also cleaner air, cleaner water, and a cleaner environment for all of us. Entonces, otra vez, estoy tan orgullosa a estar aquí con todos ustedes. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Mayor Salas. Thank you very much. Now, let's start asking the members of the Mexican delegation who are honoring us with their participation today. Let me introduce Secretary Karen Postlethwaite from the government of Baja California. Secretaria, por favor.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Me da mucho gusto saludarlos. No les robo tiempo valioso de este importante trabajo conjunto. Quiero mandarles un saludo de parte de nuestro gobernador Jaime Bonilla Valdés, agradecerle a Héctor Vanegas la invitación a esta reunión y felicitarlos por el gran esfuerzo que todos hemos hecho en nuestra agenda y en nuestro día a día para hacer realidad el mejoramiento de la movilidad, de la calidad de vida, del bienestar de nuestra región Cali Baja, que en conjunto sin duda lo vamos a lograr. quiero informarles que hace unos días, el 18 de febrero, se estuvo en el sitio del futuro puerto fronterizo Otay 2, trabajando en conjunto con la Secretaría de Comunicaciones y Transportes y las empresas privadas que están llevando a cabo los trabajos para la compra del derecho de vía, entre otros trabajos preparativos. Fue un honor de parte del gobierno y de mi persona estar en el sitio donde va a ser transformado el futuro de Baja California y de California. Y no me queda más que reiterarles nuestro apoyo en el Estado, en la Secretaría que encabezo para seguir trabajando en estos trabajos y felicitarlos por el estudio que hace SANDAG en relación al estudio de impacto económico en la calidad del aire de los tiempos de espera en los cruces fronterizos. Creo que esto va a ser un parteaguas de la calidad de estudios que se requieren para hacer inversiones inteligentes en nuestra región. Muchas gracias y le reitero el saludo al gobernador Jaime Bonilla. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, secretaria. Gracias, Karen. Muy amable por tu participación. Now, I would like to invite also to say a brief message, Undersecretary Luis Moreno.
Thank you, Carlos. I'm so excited again to be here at SANDAG. And let me start by saying that I don't have a landscape behind me like Serge do, but I do have the Mexican national flag. And by the way, 2 days ago, we celebrated our National Flag Day. So it's a very big reason to celebrate together. And let me say that I'm very excited to be here at this meeting. I have attended SANDAG meetings on various occasions before. First, as a council member for the city of Tijuana some years ago, but most recently as president of the Border Affairs Committee of the Baja California State Congress. Today, I'm here as Undersecretary of Government of the Baja California government. So I am very interested in participating in this meeting and being able to collaborate from my new position and support this great work that SANDAG does and strengthening the binational region. We all know that the pandemic has forced us, not only as government officials, but as human beings, to find new and better ways of relationship, to relating to each other. And I am sure that what San Diego and Tijuana region has been like up to the present day will become a cross-border relationship model, not only for our two countries, but also to the other regions of the world. So thank you very much again for this opportunity to participate with you and greet again great friends like you, Carlos, Natalia, and some other friends with whom I've been collaborating in the past. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Luis, muy amable. Undersecretary Rubén Roa, your turn. Is Undersecretary connected? Rubén Roa. Rubén, ¿estás ahí?
Hola, Consul. Buen día. Vivian Salazar. No, el subsecretario no pudo conectarse. Un gran saludo por parte del secretario Mario Escobedo, el subsecretario Rubén Roa y la subsecretaria Ivette Casillas. It's so nice to see you everyone here and seeing that we have great representation of state government of Baja California with our Secretary of Infrastructure and of course our Undersecretary of Government. So thank you so much for having us and it's a great pleasure to collaborate and keep working hand in hand with you guys.
Gracias, Vivian. Tu presencia salva la plaza, así que nos alegra mucho que tú nos acompañes. Salúdanos a Rubén. Well, now it is a great honor for me to introduce the Honorable Zulema Adams, Mayor of the City of Tecate. Señor alcalde, qué gusto saludarla.
Hola, muy buenas tardes a todos. Qué gusto estar otra vez aquí con los miembros del Comité de Fronteras, Cobro y además autoridades de SANDAG y la región, todos los que nos acompañan de la región de San Diego y de acá de Baja California. Soy Olga Zulema Adams Pereira, presidente municipal, alcalde aquí en Tecate, Baja California. Y pues nosotros somos ciudades fronterizas. Mucha de la gente que vive acá en Tecate siempre está cruzando, trabajando allá. Entonces nosotros, yo creo que debemos de tener siempre lazos muy estrechos y tener toda esta comunicación, crecer nosotros también a la medida que crece un lado de la frontera, también crecer el otro lado de la frontera, que nadie se vaya quedando atrás. Por eso es tan importante todas estas reuniones, los proyectos, los estudios de impacto binacional, es importantísimo. Tuvimos una situación muy grande en lo que es la pandemia. Nosotros aquí tenemos hasta el día de hoy un horario muy reducido de ahorita que empieza a las 5 de la mañana, termina a las 2 de la tarde. Obviamente, muchas de las personas que viven acá en Tecate ahorita están haciendo sus viajes también por la ciudad de Tijuana, ya sea San Isidro o por Otay. Pero estaré muy al pendiente de pues todo lo que esté sucediendo por medio del Instituto de Planeación de Desarrollo Municipal de INPLADEM. Para los acuerdos y compromisos, nosotros tenemos acá un grande compromiso. Yo, cuando gusten, sí cruzo, también voy a los tacos en el lado de allá, ya que lo decía Alejandra Sotelo, también, aquí estamos, aquí es su casa, aquí en Tecate, cuando quieran venir a visitarnos, estamos para servir y para ayudar en todo lo que se pueda y darle este avance a los proyectos, sean de aquel lado, sean de este lado. Su servidora también es ciudadana americana, entonces estoy también pues muy interesada en lo que está sucediendo de aquel lado, aparte de ser nacida acá en Tecate. Entonces el tema binacional es importantísimo, el tema migrantes, el tema del agua, todo esto que nos viene a impactar un lado y otro lado. Pero acá estamos en Tecate a sus órdenes, el que quiera realizar reuniones con su servidora, con gusto. Nosotros vamos a San Diego o a todo el condado de San Diego si gustan. Pero estamos a las órdenes y pues les mando un gran abrazo. Es para mí un gusto volver a estar en estas reuniones en donde son muy, muy provechosas y tiene uno, aparte de ubicar y conocer gente, pues poder participar y saber cómo piensan todos los compañeros que están aquí en esta reunión. Muchísimas gracias y les mando un grande abrazo desde Tecate.
Gracias, alcalde. Y acá en San Diego la esperamos cuando nos guste visitar. Será un honor recibirla en el consulado y trabajar en alguna pequeña agenda, cuando se pueda, cuando la pandemia nos lo permita. Now, if I may, I'd like to ask Mr. Luis Javier Garavito from the city of Mexicali to say a few words on behalf of Mayor Ávila, please.
Muy buenas tardes, muchísimas gracias. Me presento, mi nombre es Luis Javier Garavito, soy el coordinador de directores del 23º Ayuntamiento de Mexicali y en este evento represento a la alcaldesa Marina del Pilar Ávila Olmeda, que por razones de trabajo que tiene en estos momentos le resultó imposible conectarse. Agradecemos a nombre de ella y saludamos a toda la concurrencia, a todos quienes forman parte de este comité e invitados, y precisamente esa invitación que hemos sido objeto en este día, la agradecemos. Es un honor, es un gran honor, es una gran distinción que conlleva una gran responsabilidad el poder participar en esta reunión conjunta del comité. Y según documento que nos enviaban, es la 14ª reunión a la cual ustedes han estado trabajando. Gracias por su invitación. Mexicali es un municipio dinámico con un carácter, con un sector empresarial muy promotor, un desarrollo económico que hace equipo con el gobierno de la ciudad para promovernos como un destino de inversión atractiva, que brinde oportunidades para los negocios. También los sectores agropecuario y comercial son importantes para la economía de nuestro municipio. Pero lo más importante, existe una intensa interrelación económica y social entre nuestras comunidades, pues muchos mexicalenses acuden a sus ciudades con el fin de consumir productos y servicios, visitar a familiares o sitios turísticos. De igual manera, muchos nos visitan para disfrutar de nuestra comida y sitios turísticos. Nos une un enorme lazo familiar, turístico y de negocios. y precisamente también los invitamos a comer la mejor comida china de Mexicali. Y aprovecho para decirles que el próximo día 2 hay tanto arraigo y tanta cultura alrededor de esta gastronomía china, que el próximo día 2 de marzo, la próxima semana, se inaugurará el Museo de la Gastronomía China, que estará ubicado en el rescate del Centro Histórico de Mexicali. Y en todo caso quedan todos cordialmente invitados a venir a probar, a saborear esa deliciosa comida. Finalmente, hemos de decir que en el área laboral hay una interdependencia que todos los días pasan al Valle Imperial a trabajar en el campo, y en todo caso esa relación es intensa, diaria, y forma parte del Valle de Mexicali y el Valle Imperial. Así pues, no nos queda más que de agradecerles a nombre de la presidenta esta invitación, y quedamos aquí en el municipio de Mexicali.
Muchas gracias, señor regidor. There is one more municipio that is present, and that is Rosarito, the beautiful Rosarito. Unfortunately, the mayor, Araceli Brown, was not able to join us. I can see from my screen that la regidora Pilar Vargas está presente. Regidora, ¿quiere decir un saludo rápido?
Muy buenas tardes, Comité de Fronteras. Para mí es un honor, es la primera vez que participo, pero es un honor y un gusto saber que hay tal coordinación para compartir proyectos de desarrollo en ambas fronteras. Rápidamente, para no hacer esto muy largo, solo les digo que Rosarito, entre su kilómetro 38, que no le pide nada al área que tiene atrás Sergio de Dina, tiene su área para surfear, ya muy famosa también. Y ni qué hablar de su gastronomía, de sus playas, y que es una ciudad con una gran cantidad de residentes extranjeros, sobre todo de Estados Unidos, y que tiene además su parte histórica y cultural. En fin, hablar de Rosarito cuando vives ahí, pues no escatimas en calificativos. Aquí lo importante es coordinarse para que los proyectos que beneficien a una ciudad, en consecuencia, beneficien a la otra. A nombre de la presidenta, que no pudo estar presente, les reitero el agradecimiento por parte de esta ciudad tan noble y tan maravillosa, en donde me honro en vivir y actualmente en trabajar en este ayuntamiento, para que lo que se tenga que hacer se haga bien y se haga en beneficio de toda la población de ambas fronteras. Muchas gracias, buenas tardes.
Muchas gracias, regidora. On behalf of the whole Mexican delegation, I would like to thank our friends from SANDAG, our friends from the elected officials in Southern California, in the San Diego County, for their warm welcome to this important Mexican delegation, for the time you have provided us to say brief saludos, brief remarks of greetings. And now, Mr. Chair, I guess we are getting to the point where we can finally start working on the agenda.
Almost. Thank you. I want to quiero agradecer a todos los amigos de México, los representantes de los varios dependencias de gobiernos y ayuntamientos por su participación y por su amistad, ¿no? Y el compromiso de buscar soluciones en ambos lados, ¿no? Y que nos beneficie a todos. So I want to thank all our colleagues from Mexico who are made here today, and of course, Ambassador Gonzalez for helping co-chair this meeting. Y nomás quería asegurar a la regidora Pilar Vargas de Rosarito que he sufrido mucho más tiempo en 38 que en Todos Santos, y he comido mucho más tacos y buenas comidas después de sufrir en Rosarito que en Ensenada, ¿no? Casi más que en Imperial Beach, casi toda mi juventud, pero bueno. I think we're all missing each other on both sides of the border for all the things that we enjoy doing. So I can't wait to get back to normal so we can continue doing that. And anyway, I want to first ask and see if we have any comments from the public or members of the committee. And just to note, because of time, We'll limit these to 5 comments of 2 minutes each. I do notice that our good friend Flavio Olivieri has his hand up along with Laura Martinez from Tijuana Innovadora. Flavio, do you want to go? And just please limit your comments to 2 minutes.
Yes, good. Hello, good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity to make some comments. And I make my comments as a Chula Vista resident. I want to urge this COBRA committee to really increase the visibility within SANDAG's transportation planning efforts of the economic development perspective for the South Bay, and tied to more high value added economic opportunities of integration with the city of Tijuana and Baja California in general, focused on the trade of services and cooperation in more knowledge-based and creativity-based industries to create this link with the growing economy of Tijuana. You know, Tijuana is going through a urban renaissance. There's many high-rise buildings for residential and commercial use that are being developed very near the border crossing, and this will create a new urban environment of a creative class, of professionals, of people who can increase the content of cross-border cooperation and more opportunities for investment for small businesses from the South Bay, and to attract companies that offer employment of high-value paying jobs. So better integration with Tijuana in transportation planning will increase the opportunities to attract more investment, and for smaller businesses to increase their trade of services with the city of Tijuana. And transportation planning plays a key role, especially into the future, as we want to have cleaner air and better quality of life. We need to increase the mass transit infrastructure that will enable this type of investment. So I really urge this committee to increase the visibility of this opportunity. I think it's a historic opportunity. In my 30 years as a economic development professional working on both sides of the border, and as a researcher of this topic, understanding all of the opportunities that we have both in the manufacturing sector and in other sectors, I see a great window of opportunity to create a binational platform for more creative industries, more service-based industries that increase the cooperation across the border. So mass transit, linkages.
Sorry to be rude, we did every 2 minutes. We have
Right.
to hear everybody.
So that would be my comments.
Thank you. And then I mispronounced Laura Araujo's name because I have another friend, Laura Martinez, and I'm embarrassed that I did that, Laura. Anyway, Laura Araujo from Tijuana Innovadora, please go ahead.
No problem whatsoever, Serge. Just as many of you know, I'm Laura Araujo from Tijuana Innovadora. And in our nonprofit organization, we've been working since 2013 on strengthening our binational ties or creating new ties between our very, very unique binational region. Currently, we are working on an initiative, the Tijuana River Initiative, that hopefully will bring new light and new energy, positive energy to this area of our environment, which affects both sides of the border. We've been noticing throughout the years how our cooperation has been growing and becoming even wider in the areas that we share. So as Serge mentioned, we've noticed that this is not only an area of large opportunities, but it also has great leaders. So congratulations to the new leaders, Mayor Todd Gloria and Alcaldesa McFarland. We look forward to working with you, and hopefully this initiative, Tijuana River Initiative, will help us solve an environmental problem here in our region. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I think you may have seen that I tweeted today that I wanted to acknowledge Tijuana Innovadora and the Smart Border Coalition, and I would be remiss without saying the San Ysidro Chamber of Commerce, organizations that are leaderful organizations that, you know, it hasn't been easy over the last few years to work on cross-border relations, and it's clear that our civic organizations really did an amazing job, and Tijuana Nueva Lora is such a positive force for doing constructive engagement and cultural ties and all kinds of things, environmental issues. So thank you so much, Laura, and appreciate all what Tijuana Nueva Lora does, and you do as well. And then of course, I'll call on Jason Wells from the San Ysidro Chamber of Commerce. Again, Jason, I want to thank you personally as well for all the work that you've done and just relentlessly promoting cross-border ties and in a very constructive, strategic, practical way. There's not an inch of ground of the border crossing that you haven't covered and figured out how to make more efficient. So anyway, with that, Jason, take it away.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I look forward to today and celebrating the fantastic work of SANDAG staff, both on Otay 2 and, excuse the image, I'm out in the street, but on Otay 2 and on the border wait time studies. But I must address the elephant in the room. Ya saben cómo soy, pa que me invitan. And that's the reality of today. The $1 billion both countries have spent at San Ysidro are not functioning. Tecate is not functioning. Mexicali is not functioning. And not because of COVID, but because of a political capricho from the Trump administration that the current administration has shown no interest, nor Mexico, in changing. And that's the arbitrary border restrictions. Now, I was literally told yesterday that people want to open it, but it's such a headache to Mexico and to Washington that I should shut up and wait. As a Black American, I hope I don't have to explain to you what shut up and wait's done to our country in its history. But what the wait meant was gradual opening and not immediate opening. So I do have an invitation here. That's for anyone to share with us as we compile a list of gradual steps. Although that's, you know, immediate opening is what is needed and what should happen, but gradual steps on reopening our borders because logic, science, and what we know has shown it's got nothing to do with COVID. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. And now we have Gustavo Gallardo. Gustavo.
Thank you, Mayor Dedina. It's an honor to be here with all of you. Hope you can hear me all right. What I wanted to mention is that earlier this month, a lot of people in this room participated in the adoption of the Baja California Master Plan. I know that the Consul General was there with me, as well as with many of you. So I think that that's a major accomplishment that shows the partnerships that are on both sides of the border, because a lot of agencies and cities contributed to all the great ideas that came up in that border master plan. And that's really a blueprint of making some of the improvements that were mentioned earlier that are badly needed by some of the speakers. And they're innovative, they involve active transportation, they include also transit, they target air quality, try to speed up vehicle inspections. So I know that a lot of us are familiar with it, but maybe a lot of people in this room are not. So I would propose that maybe in one of these future meetings, we can bring back a comprehensive presentation that highlights all the great ideas that came out as part of that border master plan. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gustavo. And, you know, I want to just acknowledge the role of Caltrans. I've said this before, I think Caltrans, GSA, and SANDAG is like the NASA on the US side of the border and border planning, along with our counterparts in Mexico. It's so complicated and requires so many moving parts. It's really impressive. I've learned a lot from just observing how the methodology and the implementation goes on for border planning and actually project delivery. So thank you for that. And I don't see any more hands raised. So unless I'm missing someone, is Hector, do we have anybody else? Or Valia, anybody else that has their hand raised that I'm missing? Public comment?
No hands are raised, Chair Dedina. Your mic is off, Chair Dedina.
Of course. I'm sorry. Now, item number 3, we have the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mayor Dedina. Good afternoon, mayors, council members, committee members, our partners from Mexico, Consul General. Muchas gracias. I want to welcome all of you to this special meeting. You heard it before, neither snow nor rain nor heat, not even the pandemic, will deter us from completing the important work in our region. I want to again acknowledge our essential workers, those that have carried on during the worst part of these recent times. Unfortunately, we all are experiencing restrictions in many ways, including our land border crossings, but we have work to do. I want to take this opportunity to share what we are doing at SANDAG as the Regional Transportation Agency for San Diego. As I said before, SANDAG reimagining the future transportation in San Diego County, and also working collaboratively with our partners in Mexico to reimagine the border, to reemphasize that the 3.7 million people in Baja California and the 3.3 million in San Diego are interconnected, and any future economic development cannot happen without this partnership. Mayor Dedina, I want to thank you for your leadership in this on behalf of SANDAG. You have redefined what collaboration could be and could achieve. We need to incorporate all of our work. And as you know, since I started 2 years ago, I made it a point that Otay Mesa 2 is going to have to move forward. Pre-pandemic, 3 trips to Mexico City, discussing this with Mayor Salas and Chair Blake Spear and Gustavo, we understood that this is also a priority for Mexico. So we put a date for opening this facility, and that is September 2024, which means in the next year or so, we're going to have to do a lot of work and cut the ground. And let me just say, anybody who doesn't understand the importance of the border and the border issues is missing the point. So Otay Mesa 2 is a big one of the 5 priorities for SANDAG. We just, Mayor Gloria, Mayor Blake Spear, Mayor Alejandra Solis just met with our congressional leaders in DC, and we told them how important this is. So working together, we can be more competitive, more sustainable, and yes, more equitable. Our partners from Mexico are part of this endeavor. And I want to thank our friends from COPRO for their feedback and input into this process. I'm thrilled to hear the reports today, which I'm sure will give us a lot to talk about in our meeting. But let me just conclude, Mayor Dedina, by saying it's going to take all of us working together to not only see Otay Mesa 2 operating, but to see the economic development work as a result continue. So with that, thank you to all of you for being here. Congratulations, and we should onward for a great success. Thank you, Mayor Dedina.
Thanks, Hasan, and I want to thank you for really putting a timeline to this project. I think all of us who've been involved in meetings, whether it's in Mexico City or in San Diego or Tijuana about this project, appreciate the fact that we're moving forward, and we'll hear more about it briefly. And with that, I want to turn it over to item number 4, the report from our Consul General of Mexico, Ambassador Carlos Gonzalez. And Consul General, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Mayor Dedina, Chair. This week, we have the visit of Roberto Velasco, the acting Undersecretary for North American Affairs from the Mexican Foreign Affairs Ministry. I want to thank all the stakeholders and local officials, many of them here present, who made this visit a very successful event. We had a productive meeting with Consul Susarnio and representatives from EPA, the government of Baja California, SILA and IBWC, as well as NatBank, regarding the current situation of the Tijuana River Valley and potential projects. on both sides of the border, which I'm sure will help alleviate the situation. I want to take this opportunity as well to thank Mayor Todd Gloria, who kindly welcomed the acting undersecretary to San Diego. Also, I want to thank our friends from SANDAG and Caltrans, especially Hector Vanegas and Mario Orso, who kindly organized a tour to the construction site of the Otay Mesa East new port of entry. The acting undersecretary also visited the San Isidro port of entry, the busiest land crossing in the Western Hemisphere, thanks to our friends from CBP and from the Instituto Nacional de Migración. He held meetings with academic and private sector representatives who kindly shared their honest views about a prosperous border. Finally, he traveled to Mexico City through CBX, the innovative one-of-a-kind binational bridge that connects San Diego to the Tijuana International Airport. I want to finish, Mr. Chair, I want to finish my report with one reflection. The highest ranked official in charge of the US-Mexico relation at the Foreign Affairs Ministry came to San Diego in order to make clear two things. Number one, the Mexican federal government is fully committed to keep on working in finding solutions to the Tijuana River Valley sewage problem, an issue that hurts us, both countries, and of which Mexico assumes fully its share of responsibility. Number two, Mexico is looking forward and working hard with Caltrans and SANDAG to seeing Otay Mesa East, the last port of entry to be built in this part of the border, and a crucial project for all of us, as Hasan just mentioned, to be inaugurated by September of 2024. Muchísimas gracias, Chair, for providing me this opportunity to present my report. Thanks.
Ambassador Gonzalez and Subsecretario Velasco, I want to thank you personally. I know this has not been an easy issue, and I probably honestly have not made it easy, but that's never out of a lack of respect. It's always out of love for Mexico, and also more importantly, working together with Mexico. And anyway, so I want to thank you for that. And I know I make you not really happy sometimes, but we're committed to working together with Mexico, and I think we have a new era of working together. So I'm really happy about this meeting, and more importantly, the commitment on the part of yourself, but also the Lopez Obrador administration and Subsecretario Velasco's presence here, but more importantly, the work that I see happening on the ground and the commitment on the ground. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. I know you've been for this, but I appreciate it.
And a pleasure working with you, Mayor Dedina. Thank you.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was driving the other day listening to Rayando El Sol by Maná, and literally tears were almost coming out of my eyes thinking, you know, I miss Mexico so much, but more importantly, I think all of us, and that spirit of cooperation, and it's really impressive the work that we do together, the friendships and collegiality. It's not always easy. Jason was here to remind us of that, but we continue working together because we're family, we're friends, we're neighbors, and nothing's more important than that, right? And so anyway, so I appreciate that. So with that, all that emotional stuff, we'll move on. And I think the most important thing is I want to make sure that if we have members of the Borders Committee or COBRO or from Mexico would like to have any comments, please let us know. If there are any additional comments from the Borders or COBRO committee members? I don't see any hands raised. I see Pablo Galvez from SRE is here.
Hello, Serge, and hello, everyone. I'd like to thank Consul Carlos Gonzalez for extending the invitation, as well as SANDAG and Caltrans and all of the authorities here present. Very proud to be part of this group to further collaborate on binational broad range of issues we have on the binational issues. I recently joined the Secretary of Foreign Affairs in joining Roberto Velasco's team. I will be leading the Border Affairs office, and we are very committed on strengthening our border, on developing our new ports of infrastructure, such as Otay, and strengthening the current ones, and also helping on all the water issues that Consul already mentioned. And if I can be of help to anyone here, I'll be glad to. Please reach out. I'm very glad to help out, and thank you so much.
Pablo, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. We look forward to meeting you and hanging out with you in person. Hopefully in Mexico City on the San Diego Chamber of Commerce, Tijuana delegation to Mexico City, or obviously in San Diego. So anyway, with that, any additional comments? I don't think I see any other hands raised. Am I missing anybody? Hector or Amelia?
There's no hands raised, Chair Dadina.
Great, thank you. You know, and just to be clear, this is how we get business on the border. We work together, we talk together, we talk it out. And I'm gonna say this again, this is a leaderful global model for how you do work on the border. It does make a difference, it does have an impact, and we get things done. And that's why I think that the agenda items, we have 2 agenda items really about border crossings, are clearly examples of amazingly innovative, complex, sophisticated infrastructure projects that do 3 things. First, they make life a lot better for all of us who spend a lot of our time crossing the border and have businesses and families and friendships on both sides of the border. Number 2, they have a significant role in improving the economy on both sides of the border. And I think we'll hear some numbers on how robust the economic trade is on both sides of the border, how the billions and billions of dollars in cross-border trade, what it means for both our countries. And obviously, as Jason talked about, our regions, our cities, our communities, and obviously our region and our states. But more importantly, and now that the US is back in the Paris Climate Treaty and Mexico never left, we've been talking about this for years, Mexico never left, we're back. There's probably not a single other place the United States and Mexico can work together. And I know our Secretary of State mentioned this today to achieve emissions reductions that help our countries achieve our Paris climate goal obligations. We haven't talked a lot about that. I have, but I think this is an opportunity for the state of California, Baja California, and the United States and Mexico and San Diego and Tijuana to show significant progress in meeting our emissions reductions goals by getting people across the border quickly, especially these trucks that idle. And that only has benefits for children on both sides of the border who suffer disproportionately from asthma, as well as kids from my community. So I'm really excited about the discussions today because it just shows that when we work together to get things done, we make things better for everyone. It's going to make it that simple. And so with that, item number 5, impact of wait times at the Baja California border crossings. We'll have Rachel Kennedy from SANDAG, Tony Homan from HDR Incorporated, and Tom Kier from Tom Kier Associates. So with that, Rachel, please take it away.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, Chair Dadina. SANDAG, Caltrans, and the Imperial County Transportation Commission have recently completed the impacts of border delays at Baja California Land Port of Entry study, and we're very excited to share the results with you today. This study is the culmination of a multi-agency effort which started in 2016, and it included 11,000 surveys conducted at the border on travel behavior and emissions-related information, and more than 12,000 direct measurements of border crossing times, as well as information gathered through interviews of cross-border businesses. This study presents a comprehensive assessment of economic and climate and air quality emissions impacts resulting from delays experienced at the Baja California Land Ports of Entry. This study was a multi-agency effort, and we greatly appreciate the input and collaboration from all of our partner agencies. Staff from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection provided the team with valuable input during the study effort, and I'm pleased to introduce CBP Assistant Director Sally Carrillo and Supervisory Program Manager Ed Castorena, who are with us here today and would like to share some brief remarks. Sally?
Yes, hello. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very good. Well, thank you for the opportunity. And wow, this was some very powerful words, expressions from everyone. this afternoon, I wrote them down because you all had a very important message in the role that you play. And so for me personally, I am just honored to be to have been part of the study, number one, and then of course to continue the partnerships that we continue to have with all of our stakeholders. So on behalf of CBP, I just want to thank everyone, especially SANDAG and all of the members that we worked with, because these studies will definitely help CBP shape the future that you have all spoken about. And so you all know me, most of you know me, I'm very committed to continuing to develop further the partnerships and hopefully get to where we need to get with respect to having that border crossing that everyone wants to have. So thank you in advance, and please remember to always include CBP. You do, and we're very grateful for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. This study helps to quantify what many of you already know in your gut. Investments in our ports of entry and enhancements to their operations help to reduce wait times, which in turn improves our dynamic binational economy and reduces emissions. Today, members of our consultant team, Tony Homan and Tom Kerr, are with us to share the methodology and study results with you. And now I'll turn it over to Tony.
Thank you, Rachel. Do you want me to share my video?
Yes, please.
Okay. Actually, not the video, here we go. Thanks again, Rachel. My name is Tony Homan. I'm an economist with HGR. It's truly been a pleasure for me to work on this project, and I definitely appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today, to present some slides and show you some results. Y para todos los hispanoparlantes en la reunión, soy Tony Homan de HDR. La verdad que ha sido un placer trabajar en este proyecto y la verdad que agradezco la oportunidad de hablar con ustedes hoy, presentar unas diapositivas y los resultados. Y tengo que agregar para todos mis amigos tijuaneros, mucha suerte el domingo contra Rayados de Monterrey. So back to English. Next slide, please. Now, this is a beautiful slide. It's really quite ubiquitous at this point. I think you've all seen it. Moving from left to right, we look at all the important border crossings on the Baja California border. We have San Isidro on the left, which is a massive personal movement crossing for pedestrians and private vehicles. Looking at 14 million pedestrians per year. Then you have Otay Mesa, which is the largest commercial crossing, 3 times larger than Calexico. And then we have Tecate, and then we have Calexico and Calexico and Mexicali. So we've all seen this, but these are very important crossings because when you look at the economic powerhouse, which is really the Southern California megalopolis, depends a lot on the back and forth movements, and all the stuff coming from these 2 economic powerhouses in Baja California, Tijuana, and Mexicali, move through these 2 big points. So it gives you a nice picture of what's really going on the ground. Next slide, please. Now, so really, what are we doing with this and why is it important? There are 3 really important points. There's economic impacts and there's some quality of life impacts. The air you breathe, the ability to cross the border and maintain these social interactions, like all the important political folks that were talking earlier today, the ability to cross, meet friends, have un taco, whatever. These are very important stuff. It's quality of life and economics. Next slide, please. Now, we've had previous studies. We've had the very famous study done by Imperial Valley and San Diego in 2006 and 2007, and a more recent one done by SCAG in 2012. Now, why this study was originally proposed and done, which was completed in 2018, and this was a refresh that was done in late 2020, was we needed a more technically sound assessment of the economic impact experienced in the region, because there's been a lot of changes to some of these more important studies of 2006 and 2007 in particular were done. It also provided the partner agencies like you all and the public with the importance of reducing border crossing wait times. And indeed, when we talk about some of this, just the real importance of the freight flows in the first place and the crossings of personal movements. Next slide, please. Now, so what's changed in some of these studies? I gave you sort of a little hint. Now, the big elephant in the room was there was this great recession in 2008 and 2009. And it had all sorts of ripple effects on the local and regional economies. So the basis for some of these previous studies, which they were forecasting off of, changed significantly. So you needed a new study to be able to account for that huge decline in economic activity. Now, that's linked also to point number 2. You have some lower crossing volumes that we expected in the earlier studies because the forecasts were lower than actually came out to be. And that really was tied into the Great Recession. Now you have a lot of other interesting stuff. There's some metrics in the study that were used to create the results. One's called elasticity. In English, that's just how sensitive folks are to changes in things. So if you raise a price, you buy less. If it takes longer to do something, like the attribute, so to speak, you're going to be less attracted to doing this. In this case, the attribute's crossing the border. Some of the elasticity measures that were used here in particular for people movements were lower than some of the earlier studies. So that's going to mean some results that are less than some of the previous studies, but more rigorous. Now, there's also been some very interesting stuff that's going to lead to some of the next slides. There's been a lot of stuff on the ground, both with policy and with infrastructure, that's made the wait time experience better. You've had increased use of technology that's led to a reduction in average delays overall. And you had a lot of great infrastructure. We're going to go on the next slides. And another metric issue that we had, which is number 5, is the definition of baseline wait time. In some of the earlier studies, they were including all the wait time. And as some of our stakeholders in CBP pointed out correctly, that you have to account for some very base level wait time at CBP, even if things are going smoothly, to account for that, because that's what's really going on at the border. And of course, there's been a lot of changes after the Great Recession. There's been a lot more integrated supply chain integration of goods moving back and forth under NAFTA and now US, Mexico, and Canada agreement, USMCA. So we try to account for some of these. Some of the latter ones, we really couldn't come up with USMCA, but a lot of the integrated supply chain issues under NAFTA, we pick up by having a new study. Get it, next slide, please. Now, this shows you some of the great work that's been done on the infrastructure. These are beautiful pictures because they're showing some very modern border crossing facilities. Now, for the average user, what does that mean? It's when you're crossing like from San Isidro, it's going to take you less to cross. So when we're talking about some of the earlier studies, they had some larger wait times because of some of the more antiquated technology and infrastructure in place. When you improve that infrastructure and the technology, you're going to improve the overall experience, and wait times are less. However, when we're looking at the impacts, which is one of the reasons we did the study, that's going to have a lower impact on those numbers. So you're going to see a slightly less number than some of the earlier studies. Next slide, please. Now, a couple of things to point out what the study doesn't do, and I gave you a little hint before. We don't pick up anything with the new USMCA agreement. Why is that? This is done on everything that was going on in 2016. We just updated some of the results based on some new SR11 delay data. And it's the worlds that existed in 2016. It doesn't pick up any of the COVID restrictions, which have been really traumatic in border crossing, not only in the Mexican-American border, but also with Canada. Prime Minister Trudeau just yesterday said he doesn't see opening the border to Americans anytime soon. So it doesn't pick up any of that. And it doesn't pick up Governor Newsom's most recent zero emission policy. Sorry for going so slow, Rachel. Next slide, please. Now let's talk a little bit about what we actually did in the study. It's called an economic impact analysis, or EIA model. It uses something called an input-output model. We estimate impacts on both sides of the border, so it's binational. It accounted for the most recent research findings that were in play in 2016, and really hasn't changed too much. As Rachel pointed out, and in some of her earlier talking points, it was an intensive data collection effort, relying primarily on firsthand data, the border survey data, which took a lot of people on the ground to collect that. We had an excellent peer review process with Tom Keir, we'll talk about in more detail later. And all these were fed into an IO model, the input-output model for the United States and Mexico. And all these boxes, based on what they're picking up, is what I just described. We had a literature review. We apply these multipliers from the IO model, along with some of these fact gathering on the ground, to come up with a really good assessment of what delays at the border mean in dollars and cents: output, employment, and labor income. And again, one thing I do want to stress, this is the impact of delays and not necessarily the impact of the personal movements or freight flows, which would be a lot larger. This is just a delta of how fewer folks and how much fewer freight you would have because of delays. Next slide, please. Now here I turn it over to Tom Kira. Tom?
Hi, can I be heard right now? Yeah, there we go. Mayor Dedina inspired me to put up a Mexican surfing shot as well. So that's Punta San Carlos behind me there. My name is Dr. Kier. I am a vehicle transportation expert as well as an air quality expert. And a couple of years ago, back in 2012, 2013, I helped Federal Highways and the Joint Working Committee for the Border put together an analysis protocol for analyzing both delay and emissions at US-Mexico land ports of entry. In this analysis, we've taken the approaches that we've used there, we've adapted them a little bit to fit specifically with the situations along the US-Mexico border in California. And this background slide is just a general one-pager on the methodology that we use. In general, we create a model that works in parallel with HDR's economic models. Ours is a model for each port of entry that's a queuing and delay model that looks at things on a process by process perspective. So the details are in the slide there, but in general, we look at emissions for a number of different types of pollutants, ozone precursors such as reactive organic gases, commonly referred to as ROG, and oxides of nitrogen, commonly referred to as NOx. San Diego is currently non-attainment for ozone, so those ozone precursor emissions are, of course, important. We also looked at greenhouse gases using CO2 as a surrogate for all greenhouse gases. And then we looked at localized pollutants of interest, particulate matter, both PM10 and PM2.5, which are inhalable and sort of ultrafine aerosols in terms of a general description of them. And we looked at carbon monoxide as well. In terms of processes, the approach that we use looks at every step as you cross the border. So it's got a queuing model that estimates vehicle activity for the primary inspection booths, for secondary inspection, for non-intrusive inspection on the trucks, trucks being sent to the cargo docks. We look at everything. And then we also break those activities up by the type of crosser as well. So Century lanes are analyzed separately from ready lanes and general purpose lanes, fast lanes, etc. So that's sort of a summary on the methodology there. Let's go to the next slide. There we are. And so we had both for the emissions portion of this analysis and the economics portion of this analysis, we had an extensive peer review process, really starting back in 2016 and 2017 as the study was getting off the ground. And this lists dates that we had both the emissions peer review meeting where we went over methodologies and types of numbers we would be using, different models and whatnot. And then as well as 2 peer review processes for the economic analysis. That first date, the April 20th date, was focused more on the conceptual framework that HDR used. And then the later date looked at more at quantifying values for some of the key inputs. So again, a robust peer review process that resulted in enhancements to the methodology. If we go to the next slide. The analysis looked essentially at well, as I think of it, 5 different scenarios, but there's a few ways you can look at this. I'll work with the way I most commonly describe it to people. We had a base year, which was 2016, and we quantified both economic activity associated with that, as well as the emissions activity associated with that. And that 2016 scenario represents the border as it was in 2016. We then have a 2025 baseline scenario, again, both emissions and economic analysis done for this scenario. And this baseline 2025 scenario essentially includes border infrastructure that is more or less already a done deal. These are projects that are either already constructed or are under construction, or the funding is already known and approved. And by 2025, they're anticipated to be built. So that's things including improvements at San Ysidro, the pedestrian west crossing, improvements that are planned at Otay Mesa, just in terms of modernization and efficiency improvements, and the Calexico West phase 1 improvements with the reworking of the Calexico West land port of entry there. And then we've got a similar scenario for 2025, but this is plus additional measures that are considered as part of the study here. Primarily the All-American Canal improvements at Calexico East and Otay Mesa East as a 5x5 facility. And when we refer to these Otay Mesa East, we refer to it as a 5x5 or a 10x10. And that refers to the number of privately owned vehicle and the number of commercial vehicle northbound lanes associated with each facility. So the 10x10 is a larger set of improvements than the 5x5. So for 2025, we assumed Otay Mesa East 5x5. And again, that's both an emissions and an air quality analysis that was conducted for that scenario. Then for 2035, we have 2 scenarios, both of which were only analyzed for air quality purposes. It's generally considered to be problematic to try to extrapolate economic models out past about 10 years. So 2035 wasn't analyzed there. And those 2 2035 scenarios consisted of essentially the same thing as that 2025 scenario with the additional improvements. And then again, the same set of basic improvements, but with Otay Mesa East expanded to the 10x10 facility. So those are the 5 scenarios that we're looking at. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Tony to start talking about the results from the economic analysis.
Thank you, Tom. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a really nice slide. It presents what some of the output delays and labor input delays are in several different scenarios. One we have from left to right, 2016 is the base year, which Tom described a few moments ago. We have the baseline for 2025 that has all the improvements that are already planned or already put in place. And then we have baseline plus some of the capacity enhancements that Tom had mentioned a second ago. So let's look what happens. Now, right now, delays cause all sorts of problems with economic output. It's a 3.4 billion annual hit a year from the current delays we face. Now, what's going to happen if we don't do anything? That impact is going to go to over 5 billion annually if we don't do anything more than what we already have in the current baseline. However, if we go ahead and do, this is US and Mexico, if we go ahead and do some of the things Tom was mentioning in the enhanced scenarios, we can bring down that impact to what it is currently now in the baseline. So we're essentially buying down every year nearly a couple $2 billion worth of impact. So this is pretty significant stuff we're looking at. And again, this is the impact from delays, not the actual movement of people and freight. Next slide, please. Now, when you break it out, you're going ahead and looking at some really interesting stuff right here. Now, a lot of the delays in the United States and any of these scenarios are very local. Why? Because a lot of these impacts are from movements of people, pedestrians, and first private vehicles. These are very localized in nature and generally stay within San Diego and Imperial County. And indeed, the way we do the modeling for movements, personal movements of people, it's basically limited to California. However, there's a big freight impact outside of California. Freight as a whole is about a third of all these impacts, and the 2025 scenarios, freight's about half. It's about half of it's outside of California. So that's pretty significant. Next slide, please. So what does all this mean? What it basically means, if you go to this little blowout stuff, is if we go ahead and do what we're planning on doing by 2025, we are effectively buying back nearly 10 years of anticipated losses. And again, that's nearly $2 billion a year once you hit 2025. And that really amounts to some very significant amounts of dollars. So, I mean, this is very important to provide significant relief for the area and indeed the whole country, because a lot of these effects have influence, as I noted with freight, outside of California. Next slide. And I turn it back to Tom.
Thanks, Tony. So for the emissions results, I've got four slides available to us here showing graphics. I'm going to really focus on this first one and then the last one. And the first four are all like the first one that we see on the screen here. We're looking at the regionally important pollutants. So these are ozone precursors and greenhouse gases. There's separate slides and images available in the report that are port of entry specific for the localized pollutants, the particulate matter and the CO, but these regional ones are generally of more interest to people. And the four slides that we've got in the handout here today are summer design day. So we look at both summer and winter conditions, and we're presenting the summer ones just that the winter ones look similar. The values are a little bit different, but same basic trends are there. So we've got summer design days for San Diego County and Imperial County, and then we've got separate slides for each of those for the privately owned vehicles and the commercial vehicles. And important to note, these are all per 1,000 vehicles crossing, be it 1,000 trucks or 1,000 privately owned vehicles. And the general thing to notice here is that for the most part, due to improvements in both vehicle technology and fuel technology, we've got lower emissions, as well as the investments that are already going on at the border. We've got lower emissions in general in 2025 than in 2016 per 1,000 vehicles crossing the border. And that is then, you get additional benefits out of this when you add the additional capacity enhancements under the 2025 plus Otay Mesa East 5x5 scenario and enhanced transit and pedestrian facilities there. As we move out to 2035, again, we can continue to see emission reductions, but it begins to taper off a little bit from that 2016 to 2025 reduction. So in general, those emission reductions are maybe half of what they were the prior 10-year period. So that's the general trend on those regional emissions. If we could skip up to slide 19, which is greenhouse gas, focuses on the greenhouse gases. It's another bar chart. Couple more forward. And one more, I believe. Yep, that's the one. So this, in contrast to the prior chart, this is greenhouse gases, so CO2. It's in metric tons per day. And this is total for the entire border. So this isn't per 1,000 border crossings. This is the total inventory of emissions at the ports of entry. And in this presentation of it, we can see both the San Diego and Imperial County, which corresponds, of course, to Tijuana and Tecate versus Mexicali on the Imperial County side. We've got Algodones in here as well for Imperial County. But we've got again, the POVs and the commercial vehicles broken out separately. And we can see in general that the emissions go up in 2025 when we look at it in terms of total emissions rather than per 1,000 vehicles crossing the border. And what that represents is essentially the volume in traffic growing faster than the emission reduction benefits from the infrastructure investments, the fuel technology, and the vehicle technology. You can see in 2025, when we add in the additional capacity enhancements that are being planned but are not yet fully funded and fully approved, we almost get 2025 back down to our 2016 baseline levels. And then as we go out to 2035, again, we've got a little bit more reduction that actually brings us back below our 2025 levels. But those reductions are beginning to taper off, relative to the 2016 to 2025 period. They're about half as much of a reduction as what we saw. The 2025 to 2035 reduction is smaller. And again, that's because we're seeing less benefit out of cleaner fuels and cleaner vehicles as time goes on. And if we go up to the next slide, that really drives our conclusions. And the main conclusion that we've got is really pulled out in this quote. So I'm on slide 20 now. And the quote in there is, infrastructure improvements by 2025 make a noticeable contribution to emission reductions, but to keep that downward trajectory of emissions past 2035, we really need additional interventions, both in terms of vehicle technology, fuel technology, but also continued investment at the ports of entry themselves. And on my screen, I'm seeing we're still on slide 19. I was just covering slide 20. And I think, Rachel, do you want to cover the overall study recommendations?
Yeah, if we'll go to the next slide, then I can touch on those briefly. So as you've seen in the data that was shared, reducing delays at the border benefits the economy and air quality on both sides of the border. And the study contains a number of recommendations of strategies to reduce wait times. These include investments in port of entry infrastructure and capacity, operational efficiencies, strengthening transit and active transportation connections to our ports of entry, leveraging our important binational partnerships as well to help move cross-border mobility solutions forward. And if you go to the last slide, please. This slide here provides you with contact information for myself and my colleague, Zach Hernandez, who was instrumental in the development of this study, as well as information for our webpage. And on the webpage, you can access the full report, which also includes the executive summary in both English and Spanish, as well as a project fact sheet, a list of frequently asked questions and responses, and a document that we call a SANDAG info bit that has a number of key takeaways from this study. So now I would like to turn it back over to Chair Dedina to take any questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rachel and Thomas. Really great, and Tony, really important stuff. Rachel, can you go back to the slide that I think it's slide 20, just so we can highlight that? And then I know we have Vice Chair Moreno has a question. So we'll open it up to COBRA members and Borders Committee members right now if you have questions or comments for our staff. But yeah, this is maybe one of the most important things I've ever seen in this meeting. This is critical stuff, really important stuff. So Vice Chair Moreno, go ahead.
Oh, I went away and I'm back. Good afternoon, and thank you for this presentation. I want to first off commend staff for all your work on this study. I think it was very impactful to see the amount of jobs and billions of dollars that are being lost to border delays. This study is more necessary now, more so than ever, right? Especially when we're making the case for funding of Otay Mesa 2 and other border infrastructure. I'm the council member of District 8 in the city of San Diego, so I focus on San Ysidro and Otay Mesa 2, and I actually live in San Ysidro as well. And the point that I wanted to get to is that this really illustrates the daily average greenhouse gases emitted into our communities due to the delay of the border. I think, you know, by quantifying the economic and environmental impacts of delays in border crossing, I think we can better understand the impacts to our communities and our region. Now, I'm a political science major, it's Dr. Kier, right? So I wanted to ask a question about, if we can go back to slide 19. And for those of us who are not scientists, in slide 19, you mentioned the POVs are emitting 154 metric tons of CO2, and Otay was emitting in 2016 baseline 182 metric tons. Can you tell us, just in layman's terms, what is 1,000 metric tons of CO2? Because that can you give us an equivalent so we understand what that means?
Sure. So in round numbers, and this is covered in the discussion section in the volume 3 report, which is the air quality portion. In round numbers, the difference between these scenarios for San Diego is about 1/10 of the regional, 1/10 of 1%, pardon me, 1/10 of 1% of the regional on-road emissions inventory. So if you were to take all of the driving activity in San Diego County for 2016, the difference in these, so that 457 to 535 or the 538 to 489, differences on the order of 40 metric tons per day. That's about 1/10 of 1%. And while those differences drop over time, the size of the local on-road inventory drops over time as well. So that stays somewhat consistent.
Dr. Kier, can you compare maybe what 1,000 metric tons is? What does that look like? Is that, you know, 5 cars in a garage? You know, is that 20 cars? Like, is there any comparison, just so we can get an idea? Because you tell me 1,000 you know, metric tons of CO2. You know, like I said, I'm not a scientist, so I don't understand what exactly that looks like in layman's terms.
So in layman's terms here, and I don't have the number in front of me, so I'm going to back into it, but we should be approximately correct here. There's probably around 3 million vehicles in San Diego County. And so if we were to look at that in terms of, I was saying it's about 1/10 of 1%. So that would be the equivalent of about 3,000 vehicles per day. If my math is correct. There's a saying, never do math in front of other people.
and maybe I could take this offline and I could ask you directly in a separate meeting. But basically, what I'm trying to point out is, and the concern is for me is, you know, that delays and commercial crossings continue. Border communities, I think, will continue to get shortchanged, right? The Otay Mesa port of entry ranks second amongst all the U.S.-Mexican border crossings in total crossing volume, and I'm a proponent of that. Right? We were just working on the La Media project in Otay Mesa proper, We got $22.7 million to have those trucks go back and forth to help commerce, but also for the idling, right? These trucks used to stay there for 4 hours before the city jumped in and started to make it a one-way and all that, right? And all these trucks go all over the nation, and they benefit millions of Americans. However, border communities such as the one that I live in are the ones that are paying the environmental price, right? The idling of vehicles and ports of entry is directly linked to the emissions that pollute the air of San Isidro and Otay Mesa. And so, and I understand the different scenarios, including capacity expansion enhancements to assist with delays, but I didn't see an enhancement to address the pollutants in our border communities. And I think this is a social equity issue that we need to address. I understand it's not going to get done tomorrow, right? But I think we have to start thinking innovatively to find a solution. I'm always a proponent of reaching out to our state and federal partners. A funding source, I think, should be identified to address the environmental impacts due to these border crossing delays. And also we need to identify funding to help mitigate the environmental impacts in my border community, right? All of the border communities, but today I'm the council member of District 8, and that's what I'm advocating. And so overall, this is a fantastic study. I think with data that will heavily, we're gonna rely on this data heavily. I know that, whenever we are meeting in DC and Sacramento, we are going to be showing this data to all our legislators, not only to show the economic impact that we're having to the whole nation, but also the environmental impact that we're having, particularly to my neighborhood. And so obviously this discussion continues. And I thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. And I look forward to many more discussions.
Mayor Didina, if I may.
Thanks, Vice Chair Moreno. And then just, I think the last time we had the CBX folks talk at the Borders Committee last year, or the year before, 2019 probably, they mentioned that they're taking 3,000 cars off the road a day. That maybe have changed during the pandemic, but so that's a good indicator of what we can do when we have these innovative projects. And obviously getting help to Mexico as well on fuel, just on fleets, right? Like on cleaner burning fuel, on and more electric cars, et cetera. That should be a top priority for, obviously, when we have these bilateral discussions on climate change, right? And how they impact our kids, and your kids, especially in San Isidro, who are suffering maybe more than any other community, except for maybe Calexico and Mexicali, from air quality impacts, right, in the entire country. So with that, I know we have Councilmember Jack Hsu, our new member of the Borders Committee. Thank you, Councilmember Hsu, and it's great to have another great environmental advocate here on the committee. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Dina. I always like being in a meeting with Councilmember Moreno because she brings up so many great points. But I wanted to answer her question from another perspective. A mature tree, average mature tree, in 1 year can sequester about 40 pounds of carbon dioxide or carbon. So if you look at the other side of the spectrum, as we burn fossil fuels, to sequester it, to put it back into a form that we could put it into the ground later or whatever, is a huge task. But first, I want to say how happy I am that SANDAG and our border communities and local leaders are concentrating on this issue that is so important to our region. It is one of the greatest sources of pollution and illness and health effects in our region. So I'm so happy we're doing this. But like Councilmember Moreno, sometimes I see the numbers and thousands of pounds and stuff, and it doesn't help me because it's hard for me to grasp what that really means. So I wish at some point we can go to the next level. How many people are suffering from asthma because of this pollution? How many cases of an emergency room are we speaking about? And some of that information I know is available. We just need to go to the health department to find that. How many cancer cases? How many premature births? Those are all those issues that I think we have to address, and then those costs and how much is hurting our economy. So I hope at some point we can go to that level as well. This is a great start because we have more data now than we had before on the effects of this border community. I have some questions with regards to whether or not this study looked at induced demand. So I know in transportation that is something that we're looking at, that as we build more lanes, sometimes we never get rid of the congestion because just more and more people use those lanes. And the other point that I'm really concerned about is our goal for a region, for the state, and hopefully for the rest of the country and nation and world is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by a lot, as in 30% by 2035, or almost getting to net zero. How are we going to get to that level of reduction in emissions throughout this area? Those are goals that we have to adopt and have plans on how to do it. How are we going to achieve that? So by 2025, if we prorate that, we need a 5% reduction from current time, if not more, maybe as much as 10% reduction, and to project further into the future, going down to almost zero emissions. That's our real task that we have before us. Not an easy task. I want you to leave one more image or vision in front of you as a possible way out, and I think can help us all. In SANDAG, we often talk about the low sand corridor, a rail system that goes from San Luis Obispo all the way through Los Angeles, Ventura, all the way past Orange County. And most of the time we think of it as it stopping in San Diego. And I hope we can change that. The low sand corridor needs to stop in Tijuana, needs to cross the border with a train that goes at least 100 miles an hour, maybe 140 or 50 miles an hour, at least in certain parts. And when we can have that kind of a vision and say we can do that in the next 10, 15 years, we have a solution that solves so many problems, not only in terms of pollution and speed of travel, but also in terms of security. It's much easier to secure a train system and people walking by a inspector on the border than cars having to drive through. That will solve the pollution problems in my city because so many people drive towards the border, crossing through other cities throughout our region. So it's not only the high, heavy impact in Councilmember Moreno's district, but everybody in our region, both sides of the border, suffer from having a antiquated way of going across the border by trucks and vehicles. Other parts of the world have solved that problem. We need to catch up with other parts of the world with better systems that pollute very little. So I hope we can have that vision and discussion sometime in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Shu. And we just have one more before we move on to the next agenda. I have one more member of the public, unless I'm missing anybody. One member of the public, and that's Paul. I don't see your last name. Just if you could be brief, please.
Oh, Paul Ganster, Serge.
Paul. So sorry.
Chair Dedina, that's okay. Hey, thanks to the staff and the people that did the research. Terrific study, but one issue that's been out there for years is the problem of drayage trucks, the short haul heavy duty diesels that move containers back and forth across the border, partly because the U.S. has managed to avoid permitting Mexican trucks for long haul activities within the U.S. Through various types of chicanery and supposed concerns about safety. And so obviously these drayage trucks are ripe for electrification, and that would take a huge burden off Councilman Moreno's district in terms of putting pollutants into the air as these trucks go back and forth across the border. So did the researchers consider that in their analysis?
And they pocket the 800,000.
Yeah. Would you like me to address that, Tony?
Yes, I was putting my glasses on, so I got to hit the unmute button. I'm sorry, I'm blind as a bat these days. Not per se, but I will tell you this. I mean, I agree with you on the Mexican trucks. I worked as a career person in the Obama administration, it was an issue that came up quite a lot, the same with the drayage, in particular with respect to LA Long Beach, where even though they've made improvements on the trucks, the clean truck program of a generation ago, you still have all these issues with drayage trucks, and they move the stuff to Inland Empire and they leave the stuff there. And the analysis really didn't, because most of what we did was incorporate the new SR11 data runs from Caltrans, which is the new delay and volume data. But my off the shelf response, so to speak, would be if you electrified things, I don't see what difference it would make in times, because you're already having this Mexican truck issue and you have to do a transfer anyway. So if you electrify the ones coming north of the border, I mean, it shouldn't have an impact on dollars and cents other than the cost of transitioning to electric vehicles. So it doesn't really answer your question, but I don't think if you electrified it would have any impacts, adverse impacts. I mean, the real issue is you're limiting what Mexican trucks would normally do. I mean, they would go a little further. It just wouldn't be pure drayage. I think the other Councilman Shu's response of he was doing more with passengers, but you could probably use a lot better freight connections with some of these containers moving across the border. Only like 12% of freight moves by rail, vis-a-vis in Texas, where you have, I think, close to a third moves by rail. So anything you could do to improve rail connections would improve a lot of the freight, because you have freight vehicles and you have private vehicles. Obviously, private vehicles has not been much of an issue since COVID, but freight continues to move and there's continued problems. So if you can improve it by rail, you reduce a lot of emissions. And in fact, for some of the heavier durable goods, it's a more efficient movement, especially for the stuff that goes further inland into the United States. But I don't think, and this is off the shelf, sort of a gut feeling, is since you're moving these trucks north and the delay is not an issue with electrification, you could go ahead and electrify some of these vehicles over time. And when they cross the border, wherever the transition is, either with the current Mexican truck program or hopefully without it, it's really a constraint to trade, you would go ahead and reduce some of the emissions crossing. I mean, I think a nice future, this is something we talked about a lot in the Obama administration, and this Department of Transportation is sort of like Obama too. You see a lot of the same people. Indeed, my boss, Polly Trottenberg, is now the undersecretary, or the deputy secretary, sorry, she was the undersecretary, is how do you go ahead and clean up a lot of the drayage issues, not just crossing the border, but at ports. And that's a huge problem for Southern California, because LA Long Beach is truly the container port for the country. So I'm hopeful the next 4 years, you'll see more of a movement like what Chairman Shu would want, where you have more electrification of the short haul drayage type vehicles. I don't think it makes economic sense to have electrification, at least not now, for the over-the-road trucks, but I can't see it being an issue for drayage. So I know I didn't answer your question, sir, but I was trying to give you my opinion that I think it wouldn't have a bad impact.
Great, guys. Hey, in the interest of time, we have to move on. I know I see another hand by Gustavo La Fuente, but we're already behind. So thanks, everyone. Thank you for presenting this really important issue and all the public comments. And now we'll move on to item number 6. And we may have to just split it. And this is the Otay Mesa East, Mesa Otay 2 Port of Entry project updates. And we have Mario Rodriguez Molina from SANDAG, Mario Orso, Caltrans District 11, Ricardo Arazo and Erica Garcia from Mexico's Secretaría de Comunicaciones y Transporte, who are presenting this item. So welcome, Ingeniero Arazo and Erica. And we appreciate your participation for this special occasion. Mario and Maria, if you want to just take it away, please. And
excuse me.
Sure,
Chair.
Just talk about
Excuse me, Chair Dedina. This is Evelia. I just wanted to make it for the record that we need to announce if there's any comments from the public for item 5 and 4.
Okay, I thought I called that, but anyway. Can we move on then?
Yes, they just wanted me to announce it and remind you, because I guess we didn't say the actual language. Thank you.
Okay, all right, great.
Chair, this is Mario Orso. Thank you for having us here. In the essence of letting our partners from Mexico move on and talk about their item, I think we can come and give a more robust update in the future. I think the big update that we want to give, and Ricardo will be talking about it, is we're working with Mexico on a memorandum of understanding that's going to hit some keynotes, especially the one that Hasan mentioned about opening this facility by the end of 2024. And also the point that we're going to need everybody's assistance in moving forward with the aggressive timetable on both sides of the border. So I think all the people can help us are in this presentation. It's going to be a great effort, and we can come back and present how we're doing with the construction in a later meeting. So I would, if you're okay with it, we will pass it on to the presentation of our partners in Mexico.
Absolutely, and I just heard from our SANDAG staff that we need to move this forward because we don't have a lot of time. We're actually over time. So, yeah. Gracias por su presencia y
Gracias,
sí,
presidente.
Hacerlo un poquito más breve porque estamos ya.
Es muy breve la presentación. Gracias por la oportunidad. Pues básicamente coincidencias que tenemos muchas con Caltrans, con SANDAG, que nos hemos organizado para la realización de este proyecto en los tiempos que hemos acordado. Septiembre del 2024 es la fecha que tenemos vista en conjunto, y de ambas partes estamos realizando todas las acciones necesarias para poderlo llevar a cabo. Con mucho interés vi los resultados que presentaron hace un momento, y particular interés tiene el tema de los tiempos de espera para el cruce. Estamos tratando de hacer las acciones necesarias para que estos tiempos sean los menores posibles y fijarnos un escenario realista de los tiempos de cruce que podemos alcanzar. Estamos de acuerdo con la configuración de 5x5 que se presentó, y voy a pedirle a la ingeniera Erika García que nos presente nada más muy brevemente los avances en materia del lado mexicano. Son en el tema de la adquisición de los predios de derecho de vía y la elaboración del proyecto ejecutivo tanto del acceso como del recinto portuario, donde tenemos para el financiamiento de este proyecto del lado mexicano hay un acuerdo entre las instituciones, que es entre el SAT, que se van a hacer cargo de la construcción de lo que es el recinto portuario, y la Secretaría de Comunicaciones se hará cargo de la vialidad de acceso en Avenida Las Torres y el cruce. Entonces, por favor, ingeniera Erika, te cedo la palabra.
Gracias, buenas tardes. Rápidamente, sabemos que estamos cortos de tiempo, nada más reconociendo el gran avance que ha tenido el lado americano en este proyecto. Y bueno, es producto de los estudios y análisis que hemos realizado en cuestión binacional. Como bien dijo también el señor Hasan, se han tenido reuniones a alto nivel, donde a partir de ese punto podemos presentar ahora los avances del lado mexicano. Si me hacen favor de poner la diapositiva número 4, iniciaríamos con el proyecto ejecutivo. Este proyecto ejecutivo está siendo realizado por la Dirección General de Carreteras de la Secretaría de Comunicaciones y Transportes. Y ahorita lo que estamos realizando es el distribuidor que va a cruzar la autopista Tecate-Tijuana. Ya tenemos el proyecto geométrico y estamos en revisión de las estructuras. ¿Esto por qué? Porque tenemos unos gasoductos de la empresa Yenova y tenemos también unas torres de alta tensión. Entonces, ahorita ya está en revisión esa parte del proyecto, ya se había avanzado, pero estamos teniendo talleres precisamente con estas dos dependencias, dos empresas, para poder solucionar si es que hay algún problema en cuanto a cimentaciones para este distribuidor. Continuamos con la troncal, que es la vialidad que va desde la Tecate-Tijuana hasta donde va a estar nuestro puerto fronterizo. Se está llevando a cabo también el proyecto ejecutivo y las negociaciones para poder proteger estos ductos o movilizarlos, al igual que las torres, como ya mencioné anteriormente. Entonces, bueno, este es un avance que ya teníamos, no habíamos conseguido la contratación de las empresas, pero ya tenemos ahora el avance en este sentido. Con lo que respecta al puerto fronterizo, la siguiente lámina. Bueno, es la que sigue, perdón, la siguiente. Como bien mencionó el ingeniero Erazo, hay una colaboración y una coordinación entre SAT y SCT para el puerto fronterizo, donde ellos van a realizar tanto el proyecto ejecutivo como su construcción. Para ello, el SAT está en coordinación actualmente con la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, quienes van a realizar este proyecto. Asimismo, hemos tenido talleres binacionales. El pasado 18 de febrero se sentaron las bases entre CBP y SAT para poder ver el tipo, cómo va a funcionar la operación de los puertos, y ahí también ver los espacios. Al ser una revisión conjunta, hay espacios que van a dejar de lado en el puerto americano y que actualmente el SAT está revisando si requiere de más espacios, o esto es lo que solicitan de su parte, como también los carriles de retorno. Entonces son talleres que hemos tenido a lo largo de varias semanas y que damos seguimiento en conjunto con el SAT. La siguiente diapositiva, por favor. Con lo que es la liberación del derecho de vía, también lo consideramos un gran avance porque no lo habíamos logrado. Estamos trabajando en ello. La empresa, ya se tiene una empresa liberadora, la cual está haciendo ahorita ya el reconocimiento en sitio para poder tener todos los expedientes y continuar con las negociaciones para la liberación de los predios, tanto del puerto como de la vialidad de acceso. Asimismo, también el día de ayer se llevó a cabo una reunión donde la CFE está informando del área que tiene su derecho de vía para poder negociar lo que nos hace falta, ¿verdad? Entonces, esta empresa lleva a cabo todos estos trabajos y seguimos, como bien les comento, creo que los avances son grandes porque ya se tienen talleres donde se está llegando a puntos muy importantes de decisiones para poder continuar con liberación de derecho de vía y con el proyecto ejecutivo. Asimismo, la Dirección General de Desarrollo Carretero ya tiene la contratación, como bien saben ustedes, a partir de la última reunión se comentó también de alto nivel, que ya se tiene la gerencia de proyecto. La gerencia de proyecto está a cargo de la empresa Cali Mayor y nos está apoyando en todas las actividades, tanto con dependencias mexicanas, en coordinación para dar seguimiento a un cronograma que nos permita poner en operación 2024 este cruce, y también en cuestión binacional. Como bien se mencionó, estamos trabajando con el memorándum de entendimientos técnicos, así como las reuniones técnicas donde se puede ver desde desplantes en ambos lados de la frontera para los puertos fronterizos, como instrumentación de ITS y carriles de retorno, o sea, todo el proyecto en sí. Esto es lo que hemos tenido, creo que al día de hoy ha sido un gran avance en lo que tenemos: liberación de derecho de vía, proyecto ejecutivo y la gerencia de proyecto. No sé si hay alguna duda que con gusto pueda responder.
Mario, did you have any additional questions or comments? Or I know I know what we'd like to do is invite you, Mario, and Erica back, but Ingeniero Ikhrata, I wanted to thank you for being here and all the advancements you've made on this project. It's very impressive. This is a very complicated project. So we appreciate how much progress has been made. And then hopefully we can have you back to have a longer discussion where we're not pressed for time. But Mario, I don't know if you wanted to wrap it up or have any additional questions or comments that you wanted to address.
Well, not just to wrap it up, we should be looking at post-COVID. USMCA has shown that even during the COVID situation, we have had an increase of 8% of truck traffic, freight. And the collaboration with SCT, with SRE, with CBP, GSA has been just astonishing. And those driving to Otay has also seen how Otay is being transformed in front of your eyes, together with the huge Amazon building. So I think we have a lot of opportunities. I heard what Mr. Xu said. We are developing strategies to reduce emissions, electric vehicles, electrification stations, and others. So I think the sky's the limit in opportunities, and September or late 2024 should be our goal, and our partners are working with us in Mexico to get to that point, and that will be my wrap up.
Great. Again, Director General Ingeniero Grasso, Erica Garcia, thank you so much for the presentation. Again, the cross-border collaboration. Les agradecemos por parte de SANDAG y toda la región y California por su participación y los avances del proyecto, ¿no? Es un proyecto importantísimo que muestra que realmente trabajando juntos podemos mejorar la calidad de vida, la economía y obviamente el medio ambiente de ambos lados de la frontera y mostrar que sí, entre México y Estados Unidos, sí cooperamos entre Baja California y California, cooperamos, entre Tijuana y San Diego, cooperamos y obviamente con el objetivo de mejorar la calidad de vida de ambos lados, pero realmente las condiciones económicas en ambos lados y las condiciones ecológicas del medio ambiente en ambos lados. So with that, so thank you so much. And Mario, like I said, you're like the NASA engineer of border crossings. I really appreciate it. All the great work that you're doing. It's very complicated stuff. And I know, again, I'll say this, I've learned a huge amount for other border projects by watching the way that you all work together. With that, I'd like to ask for if there are any member or public comments. I don't see any hands raised. I know we've kind of run out of time, which I apologize for. Any additional public comments or member comments?
We have no hands raised, Chair Dedina.
All right. With that, I would like to thank everybody for participating today. I know we have item number 7, continued comments. Do we have any continued public comments, Evelia?
We do not.
Okay, great.
Chair Dedina.
So for just the next meeting, which I know will continue this issue, this item will be on Friday, March 26th, 2021 at 12:30 p.m. We look forward to seeing you all there. But again, I want to thank everybody from both sides of the border, all the different agencies and different government folks and elected officials and civil society representatives, economic leaders, you name it. It was a who's who of border cooperation. And of course, my vice chair, Ambassador Gonzalez Gutierrez, and today's vice chair, and then our vice chair, Vivian Moreno. Thank you so much, and all the Borders Committee members for doing this today. With that, I would like to adjourn the meeting, and thanks everyone. Have a great weekend.
Gracias. Hasta luego.
Gracias, Carlos.